I am Jason Abraham, the Shadow Teacher, 33. And our trauma programs perpetuate more trauma. These programs, these emotional responses coupled with certain actions that are triggered by external stimulus that we interpret a certain way. When we act in a familiar pattern and react to these, we typically perpetuate more of the same, more trauma that reinforces a certain story, a certain belief, a certain identity that we've become attached to. A story at one time helped us feel safe. That helped us feel safe from a frightening world that we didn't understand. But over time, these patterns and this perpetuation of this story is causing suffering. And when you go into healing this trauma, you find that those triggers are still there. They don't completely go away. But what happens is you feel the trigger, the story shows up, and the temptation is to want to go and control something out there in that external environment. You want to go and act on that emotional trigger and control something outside of you. Control other people. Control how they are perceiving you. Control how they are treating you. And so your action would be to act out towards something outside. And then, as we cannot control other people, we can only control ourselves and how we respond to our triggers, to our emotions. Again, this perpetuates the same. Typically, we act in a way that is in alignment. Again, we're trying to control people, and no one really likes to be controlled. When people feel you are manipulating them, they resist and they push back. And again, this old engram, this old action, coupled with the emotional trigger and the story, produces more of the same. So the key is, when we're on that healing path, when we feel the emotion, when we feel that story wanting to well up, we pause. We pause before we act. We sit with it. And we start to work on that different story. And I'm speaking of triggers that are related to other people. And again, something that happens in this external world that triggers this internal feeling that we have of being unsafe, unworthy, whatever it may be. But if we can look at our needs, take this moment where we're triggered just to go inside, reflect on what we need, and change our action, change how we are acting out into the world, acting and asserting ourselves, not trying to control other people necessarily, but just asserting ourselves and standing up for ourselves and valuing ourselves, then we start to change the result. We start to change what happens on what's reflecting in that outside world, which again starts to reinforce a different story within us. But it has to start within us first, then we project, then we go out with a different action, and then we get reflected back a different story to reinforce a different identity. And yet I had this situation show up in my field of awareness recently, and this is what I did. I felt the trigger show up, felt several triggers show up, but I sat with what was being brought up in me. I sat with that discomfort, took a few breaths, and then focused on the person I am becoming and that which I desire to become, that which I value. And I chose some different actions. I chose some actions that were in alignment with this new identity as opposed to the old. And sure enough, a new world starts to take shape around me. What's reflected back to me is not the same old thing. It's something new. It's the person that I'm called to be, that I'm called to embody, a person of strength, a person who is able to love themselves and feel worthy of accomplishing their dreams, worthy of love, worthy of quality relationships. And this is a process. Once again, these safety mechanisms, they served us. The trauma served us at one time. It was a way that we were able to get attention. Most likely when we were children, this is how we were able to get attention from adults when we were scared. But now, when we're big boys and girls, childish behavior and attempting to control other people like children do is not in our best interest. So that being said, be strong, be well. I wish you strength on your journey and success and healing, your triggers, your limitations. And I wish that you are able to show up in the world in the most positive, creative way that you're being called to do. And I will see you on the other side.